Hey guys, so what we're going to be talking about is the start of World War II. I'm going to break this up into a bunch of two different parts. So what you'll need to do today's lesson is two things. One, you'll need the major events timeline for the World War II graphic organizer. It's posted for you guys on Canvas. You will also need another graphic organizer or note-taking sheet for U.S. early involvement before we actually enter the war. All right, so I'm gonna run through the major events and timeline of stuff that got the war started. So a couple things. I don't think you need to have all of this down. So if you don't want to write all this down, we just kind of highlight the stuff that matters or stuff that we should take out of this. So first of all, Hitler, big thing I want to flashing red sign here, right? Hitler is a dictator, but he's elected to being the chancellor, right? He is not going to seize power through a military coup. He will be elected, and then from there, he will begin to pass reforms that essentially concentrate power in his hands. Why do the people of Germany pick him? A little bit about world history here. Germany was feeling incredibly weak in the 1920s. They suffered through what is called the Weimar Republic. They had hyperinflation. The Treaty of Versailles had crippled their economy, crippled their pride, and Hitler basically, was able to kind of harness that frustration and anger and basically gather enough support to win a relatively narrow election. Now, once he gains power, he's going to do lots of things that are going to get us to the war. So first thing he's going to start to rebuild Germany's military. That's a big deal. The Treaty of Versailles had reduced their army to 100,000, had essentially eliminated their navy and gave them no air force. So he starts rebuilding the military. All right, cool. He begins to pass legislation that more or less eliminated all political parties except for the Nazi Party. There was this famous incident called the Night of 100 Knives, where he basically sent out his secret police to go and kill anybody who opposed him. And so, literally, what we start seeing Hitler do is after he gets elected, he begins to consolidate power around him. And again, Germany is feeling weak and vulnerable, and nobody's really objecting to it. All right, so we're going to jump ahead here a little bit, all right, to Germany Anschluss of Austria. So, um, one of the things that happened after World War One that we have to note, beyond them losing their military and the economic punishments, Germany was broken up into a whole bunch of tiny, well, not a whole bunch of countries, but basically Germany was weakened to the point where they wouldn't be able to maybe do this again. Well, Hitler begins to make some noise and begins to argue that he should be able to unify all the German-speaking people and the people of shared German culture and heritage under one nation. And so he looks at Austria, which is just south of Germany, and says these people share a great deal in common from a cultural standpoint. They share a language. I should be able to unite them together. All right, now here's the thing. The Austrians are cool with it, and so they don't object. Um, and so essentially what happens is Hitler doesn't really invade Austria. Austria welcomes him in, and they unify the two countries together. Now here's the thing. Look at this is the date, March 1938. We aren't quite to the war yet. We're not that far off, but we're already beginning to see this move of Hitler to try to increase his power, increase his influence in Europe. Why didn't the rest of the world object to this? Well, because the truth is, if we go back to Wilson's 14 points here for a minute, Wilson basically argued, hey, we should really unite all the people of Germany or all the people of the same ethnic group together. Hitler was just doing that. What's the big deal? And then we'll talk about the other major reason in a second. All right. Now let's skip ahead just a little bit later. Again, we're getting much, much closer to the war. The Treaty of Munich. All right. So here's the deal. Hitler continues to make noise about wanting to unify the German people. And so he begins to suggest that he should be able to acquire or annex this section of Austria, or say section will be of Czechoslovakia called the Sudeland, which is this region right here. Basically, it is this region that is strong German ties and connections. You can find pockets even today that still speak German. And he basically says, again, just like Austria, I should be able to put these countries, these people together. Now, this time the world is going, let's hold on here for a second. So what they'll do is they'll have a meeting with Hitler in Munich, Germany. Now, we want to know Hitler was there, and we want to know England was there, France and Italy were there as well, but really we care about two figures, Hitler and Neville Chamberlain. All right, so Hitler will take a deal, make a promise. Give me the Suderland, all right, and I will stop. This is known as the appeasement policy. All right, that's a big term. We probably want to jot that one down or highlight that. Appeasement. I always make the connection. I always think about this, right? That little kid who's in a Target or Walmart or the grocery store who's throwing that hissy fit. And as a parent of young children, I've been here before. Um, you can do two things. Three things. You can ignore it. All right. Good luck with that. Two, you can uh, the power play. I like this move myself. You can just pick up your child and say, "We're going home," and just leave the cart. Been there, done that. Or you can do the worst thing, which is appease the child. What are they screaming about? I want a candy bar. You give them the candy bar. What's going to happen if you give them the candy bar? They're going to demand a candy bar every single time you go in the store. So here's the thing: many historians look back at with 2020 vision and go, that was really dumb. Appeasement made no sense whatsoever. But take a second and let's process this here for a second. Germany had been building up their military for years. Their military was literally probably 2 to 3 times the size of England and France. Even if you really combine them together, Germany had a much stronger military. They were outspending them. They were basically, if there had been a military conflict, they would have lost. So Chamberlain is thinking, okay, I can't fight him now, but maybe I can buy some time. So England and France begin to try to ramp up production, but they're just too far behind Germany, to be honest with you. Now, the other rationale logic is this too. We've talked about the fear of communism, this Red Scare that took place in the 1920s. It's not just here in the United States, it's everywhere in Europe. And so there is this big, huge communist country, I'm looking at you, the Soviet Union, that everyone's really scared of. So basically, what winds up happening is England and France are like, well, Germany's got this big, badass military, and communism is really scary. If Hitler's on our side, we can take out the Russians if we need to. So part of the rationale too is like he's an ally to beat the Russians. So on the surface, it seems really dumb, and I think probably the reason it looked really dumb is this picture right down here is very famous. So Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of England, comes home to England, holds up that piece of paper you see right there, and he goes, "We will have peace in our time." Yeah, the war is going to begin in a year. So, yeah, no, you won't. So that got played over and over and over and over again. And as you might imagine, when something goes wrong, politicians get blamed. He's going to be out of office relatively soon. All right, now here's the thing. Hitler doesn't just take the Sudeland, which was this kind of like region that was around the edges. He takes all of Czechoslovakia. And here's the thing: Czechoslovakia was a relatively large country, would have been a valuable ally in fighting Hitler, but they're out. All right. So, yeah, as you can see here, Greece in September 38, he invades in March of 39. So he waits a little bit. But this was not like Austria. The Czechoslovakians did not welcome him in. This was an invasion. Now, what's happening in the background that no one really knows about is Hitler and Stalin signed this kind of agreement that says it's a non-aggression pact. And I haven't here that they didn't actually say this, but don't mess with me and I won't mess with you. So here's the deal. These two were supposed to be mortal enemies, right? Fascism and communism are supposed to be polar opposites. But the problem is Hitler's not dumb. Hitler knows that he has big grand plans. He's going to take over Europe. Eventually, he's going to need to take on Russia, but he can't take on both Russia, France, England, all these other global powers at once. So he signs this deal with basically Stalin saying, all right, here's the deal. I won't fight you, but if you stay out of my way, we can split up and divide up Poland together. And you get some more land, and I get some more land. Everyone gets what they want. Also, a couple of years before this, just FYI, Hitler had signed a agreement with Japan. That's how that alliance comes into play. And the irony of that agreement that he signed was, or they signed was, it was a anti-communist agreement because Japan and Germany basically were on opposite sides of the world, more or less kind of quote surrounded Russia, and this would have been an obvious way for the two of them to control Russia. So publicly, he's promising to fight communism with the help of Japan. Privately, he's working out a secret deal with the Russians to keep them out of the war for now. All right, so start of the war, Hitler invades September 1st, 1939. Famous expression we want to highlight here is the Blitzkrieg, right? That means lightning war. Essentially, here's the problem. Poland was not a strong military. They had been promised assistance by England and France, that they would come to their assistance. And in the 11th hour, England's like, so about that, we're not going to do that. We're not going to come help you. We're not going to put our soldiers in harm's way. And so Poland, between Germany coming in from the west, and then Russia coming in from the east, Poland's conquered literally in a matter of weeks. Um, and that's it. This is the kind of the official start of the war. Um, Again, bless their heart, Poland tried, but they just didn't have the necessary resources and forces to fight them. All right, now September 3rd, England and France declare war. So now we've got England, France, Germany, Japan's in this thing, Russia sitting on the sideline, not involved yet. All right, so the Blitzkrieg rages on to the spring of 1940. Basically, the one thing we want to do, especially if you look at this map down here, it is insane to think all that he managed to conquer. He managed to get all of this under his control in less than a year and a half. On the list of countries over here is pretty Denmark, Norway, Luxembourg, Greece in 41. So a little bit later, but that's because Greece provides some geographical challenges. All right, so basically he's using this to conquer everyone. And essentially all he's really doing is Hitler's basically knocking everybody out over here, and then he's going to turn his attention to France. And the best way to get to France is through Belgium. Unfortunately, the Belgians have been invaded twice now during World Wars by Germany on their way to France. Sorry, Belgium. I guess the waffles just don't build good walls. All right, so here's the deal. He invades France. France gets conquered in about 4 weeks. We're talking about arguably the third, fourth, certainly top five most powerful countries on the planet. Hitler basically just runs over them. And they basically are out of the war. Now, what's worth noting here in terms of just history is that Germany basically takes France and splits it in two. Germany will use the military control of the northern part that includes Paris, and then there'll be this semi-independent thing called Vichy France. This is notorious in Holocaust history because Vichy France worked very closely with the German government. Yes, there were French officials running everything, but they were really under the direction of the Germans. And if they did anything the Germans didn't like, they basically kicked them out of power. Famously and sadly, many of these people in Vichy France were more than happy to turn over any Jews they could find to Hitler and the Germans for the Holocaust. But again, the thing I'm stressing here is that France, a global power, was conquered in a matter of weeks. And as you can see from this picture up here, these pictures, Hitler intentionally did not want to bomb Paris. He wanted to preserve Paris in all its architectural and cultural splendor. Now, here's the thing. This is a big turning point in the war. England is pretty much on its own now in Europe. And so Germany is now going to turn its attention to England and begin to try to think about conquering England. Now, this is known as the Battle of Britain or Battle for Britain. I don't care which one you use. First of all, first step for Hitler is just small little air raids, try to test their weaknesses, find out what they aren't good at. Radar is just coming into fruition now. The technology is very rudimentary. It's not particularly helpful. All right, and so second phase, now that he knows where the defenses are and what they're good at, he begins to attack airfields and shipping boats. So basically what he's trying to do is cut England off from the world. The big goal here, ultimately, here is the third step. He wants to destroy the morale of England, right? He wants them to quit. Now, here's the thing. Now, you probably remember these ridiculous T-shirts everybody wore not that long ago. It was "Keep calm" and the expression is "Keep calm and carry on." That was a propaganda poster from England telling the British, "Hey, just go about your business. Don't worry about the bombings that happen every single night." Well, that has obviously became quite the thing for every T-shirt. Keep calm and choir on, or whatever. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make to you is this. The British, basically, their attitude is, we're just going to endure this, and when you stop, we'll be fine. Hitler had hoped that he would be able to do a land invasion. He had hoped that he'd be able to take out England. And the scary thing is, if this had worked, if you look at Hitler had run through all of Europe in basically a year and a half, it would not have been shocking to see that he could have done this. Luckily for us and the world, the English were able to stand up and basically resist him with a lot of assistance from us. All right, so these are some of the key events. We're now going to start talking about America during World War II, so make sure you get that graphic organizer.